What happens when a CEO walks into his own store and no one knows he owns it? Darren Mitchell stood at the edge of the parking lot, staring at the bright pastel-colored sign above the ice cream shop that bore his last name. It was one of 10 locations he inherited from his father 2 years ago, and the only one he hadn't visited in person since taking over. His dad had built the business from a single pushcart to a mini chain of neighborhood ice cream shops. Darren took pride in it, but lately, something had been gnawing at him. Customer complaints were going up, employee turnover was rising, and sales at this specific location were dipping. The district manager, a guy named Cole, kept insisting it was just a slow season. But Darren didn't believe in slow seasons when it came to ice cream. He tried checking the cameras, but the footage was grainy and half the angles were blocked by stacked boxes or decorations. So he made a decision. He'd go in himself. He spent a day at a thrift store putting together the perfect disguise: baggy khakis, a faded hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He dyed his beard darker and even added a small nose ring to throw off anyone who might have seen his photo in the break room. Not that many, had he'd never personally met most of the crew. His dad had always run things hands-off, and Darren hadn't changed that much until now. He applied through a fake online job listing he created himself. A week later, he was hired as a part-time trainee. The shop was small, wedged between a laundromat and a vape store. When he stepped inside for his first shift, the smell of waffle cones and melted sugar hit him like a wave of nostalgia. But the mood inside didn't match the scent. The music was low, the lights a little dimmer than they should be, and none of the 3 employees behind the counter looked like they wanted to be there. A tall, wiry guy with sharp eyes and a clipboard glanced up. "You're the new trainee?" he asked, not offering a hand. "Yeah." "Name's Danny." Darren kept his voice low and a little scratchy. "I'm Brent, I'm the manager." He looked back at his clipboard. "You're on register training today, don't mess anything up." Darren nodded and stepped behind the counter. A girl around 16 with a ponytail and a name tag that read Fiona was already working the register. She gave him a small smile, clearly trying, even if no one else was. "I'll show you how to clock in," she said softly. "It's kind of weird." He watched her navigate the outdated system. Her fingers moved fast and she explained things clearly. She was patient, even when the machine froze twice. Brent didn't help, he just stood off to the side, tapping on his phone. For the next hour, Darren shadowed Fiona, taking mental notes. The place was understaffed. Only 3 people on shift during a busy Saturday afternoon. Lines formed quickly and customers were waiting too long. Darren asked why they were short. Brent shrugged. "Corporate's been cutting hours. We don't have budget for more." That was a lie. Darren had approved full labor budgets for all locations. He kept his face neutral. Fiona kept moving. She greeted every customer with a smile, even when they were rude. She helped a dad calm his crying toddler by giving him a free sprinkle cup, even though Brent rolled his eyes at her. "You're too soft with people," Brent muttered to her once when she walked away. Darren heard it. Fiona didn't respond. Around 4 p.m., a woman in a suit walked in with her son. She looked tired, impatient. The boy wanted a sample of 2 different flavors. Fiona handed him tiny pink spoons with a smile. The woman snapped. "Can we move this along? I'm not here for a 5-year-old birthday party." Fiona blinked, looked startled, but stayed calm. "Sorry, just wanted him to be happy with his choice." "Maybe you should focus on doing your job instead of playing babysitter," the woman said, loud enough for the whole shop to hear. "This is ridiculous." Darren froze. His stomach twisted. Fiona's hands shook slightly as she rang up the order. Brent didn't say a word. He leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, watching. The woman walked off with her son, muttering, "God, they'll hire anyone these days." Darren turned to Brent, expecting him to step in, say something, anything. Instead, Brent walked up to Fiona. "What was that?" he said sharply. "You let her walk all over you. You made us look slow." Fiona looked up, eyes wide. He's a kid. I didn't want to upset him. You don't get paid to play therapist. You're not their friend. You're here to move the line." "Got it," she nodded, her face turning red. Darren's fists clenched. He didn't say anything, not yet. He wasn't ready. But inside, something shifted. The shift ended at 6. Fiona clocked out quickly and left without a word. Darren watched her walk to a beat-up car and sit there for a long moment before starting it. Brent slapped a clipboard into Darren's hands. "You mop tonight, don't miss the corners." Darren did it without a word, but his mind was racing. He hadn't expected this, not like this. He walked home that night, pulled off his cap and stared at himself in the mirror. His stomach churned. He'd come to check on operations. Now he was thinking about justice. The next morning, Darren stood behind the prep counter, chopping strawberries with a dull paring knife. The blades were clearly overdue for replacement, sticky, slow, and dangerous. No one had mentioned it, but after just 10 minutes, his hand cramped from the extra pressure he had to apply. The prep area was narrow and cluttered. Empty syrup jugs were stacked on the floor next to the sink, and the walk-in freezer door didn't quite seal shut, leaving a faint thrum of cold air escaping into the hallway. Brent wasn't in yet. Fiona was, though. She wore a different hoodie today, sleeves pushed halfway up her arms, earbuds dangling from around her neck, not in use. She gave Darren a small nod but didn't initiate conversation. Her eyes were red around the edges, subtle but clear when she looked down at the register screen to boot it up. Another employee, a guy named Lewis, came in halfway through the morning shift. He was older than the others, maybe mid-20s, with a drive-through headset around his neck and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved fast, efficient, barely said anything beyond what was necessary. His apron was faded and stained near the bottom hem. "You ever work food service before?" he asked Darren while restocking cups. "Some." "Why?" "Just wondering how long you'll last. This store burns through people faster than the fryer burns churros." Darren didn't laugh. "That bad?" Lewis shrugged, then jerked his head toward the back. "Brent keeps the schedule tight. No backup, no flex time. Fiona and I are usually the openers. Sometimes we don't get lunches if it's busy enough. Last week, she worked 7 days in a row. That wasn't just against policy. It was illegal. Why didn't she say anything?" Lewis didn't answer right away. He pulled a tub of rainbow sprinkles from the bottom shelf and set it on the counter. "She did. He cut her hours right after." Darren tightened his grip on the edge of the prep table. "That doesn't make sense." "Wouldn't that hurt the store's performance?" Lewis gave him a dry look. "Brent doesn't care about performance. He cares about numbers looking clean on the report. Less hours equals higher labor efficiency. Doesn't matter if people quit. He just trains the next batch." There was a pause. "You seem new. Don't get involved," Lewis added. "It gets worse if you do." Fiona stepped back from the register, tying her apron a little tighter. She said nothing, eyes on the floor as Lewis walked off to check the soft serve machine. By noon, the line stretched halfway to the door. The AC unit sputtered twice and then gave up entirely. The air grew heavy. A toddler screamed somewhere near the back of the line, and 2 teenagers behind the counter tried to keep up while Brent barked orders from the doorway to the stockroom. "Don't bother with napkins. That's a waste. Just get the cones out." "Why are we still out of cherry drizzle? I told someone to restock that." "Do not comp anything. I don't care if they dropped it. They pay again." Darren scooped non-stop, fingers starting to blister from cold metal. He watched Fiona serve a couple with a double order, her voice barely audible over the noise. She smiled politely, but her posture had changed, shoulders tight, head slightly lowered, almost like she was bracing for something. A delivery driver showed up at the back door with a shipment of dry goods. Brent stormed out to meet him, yelling about how they were early. Darren saw his chance. He made his way to the walk-in cooler, pretending to grab a tub of vanilla and instead slipped into the tiny office next to it. The computer was ancient but functional. He opened the scheduling software and pulled up the last 6 weeks. Fiona had worked 73 hours 2 weeks ago, 68 the week before that. Lewis was averaging over 60. Both were part-time on paper, no benefits, no overtime. He took a photo with his burner phone and slipped back out just as Brent came in through the rear with a clipboard. "Where's the fudge topping?" Brent barked. "In the back of the top shelf," Darren replied. "Behind the whipped cream canisters." Brent gave him a sharp glance and said nothing. By the end of the shift, Fiona was visibly limping. Nothing dramatic, but she leaned her weight differently on one foot. Darren caught her wiping down the booth tables long after closing, even though the floor still needed mopping. "You okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded without looking up. "Just sore, you should go, I can finish this." She looked at him, skeptical. "You're new, you don't know the closing checklist yet. I'll figure it out." She hesitated again, then exhaled. "I'm not supposed to leave unless Brent says it's okay." Darren stood there for a second. "Did you ask?" "I did. He told me to clean the bathroom too." It was almost 11 at night. The store closed at 10. Darren found Brent in the back counting register drawers. Fiona's limping. "She's been here since open. Can someone else finish the close?" Brent looked up, annoyed. "You volunteering? Sure, fine. But if anything's off tomorrow, I'll dock your tips." He couldn't do that. Tips were pooled, but Darren kept quiet. Fiona left without saying much. Lewis had already gone. Darren stayed until almost midnight, wiping down the ice cream wells, scrubbing the sticky footprints off the tile. The mop bucket water turned gray-brown by the time he emptied it. He walked home silent, the city quiet around him. The next day, he arrived early, hoping to catch Fiona before opening. She was already there, sitting on the curb with a plastic container of dry cereal and no milk. Her hoodie sleeves were rolled down today, hands wrapped around the container. "You're here early," Darren said, sitting beside her. "Bus schedule's messed up. Either I'm early or I'm late." He didn't respond. She ate in silence for a moment before speaking again. "You don't have to stay here. Most people don't." "I'm not most people." She gave him a sideways glance. "That's what the last guy said." "He quit after 4 days." "What happened?" Brent told him he was too slow, made him clean the grease traps 2 nights in a row. "Grease traps, we don't even fry anything." "There's a fryer in the back we barely use." He just wanted to make a point. Darren didn't speak, not yet. The week dragged on. One day blurred into the next. Fiona kept showing up. Lewis kept his head down. Brent kept snapping orders and cutting corners. Darren stayed silent, absorbing it all. He watched a freezer door nearly crush a worker's hand because the hinge was broken. He saw a customer ask to speak to the manager about a hair in their sundae, only for Brent to blame Fiona on the spot without even checking the cameras. He heard enough. Friday afternoon, the store filled with a small crowd. A school bus had dropped off a group of kids from a local aftercare program. They were loud, excited, sticky-handed, and wide-eyed at the sight of dozens of flavors. Fiona and Darren moved fast, scooping and smiling, doing their best to keep things moving. One kid, maybe 9 years old, ordered a sundae with chocolate syrup. He paid with coins and a crumpled 5. Fiona handed it to him gently. He took 2 steps, tripped, and the entire sundae splattered across the floor. The boy looked up, stricken. The shop fell silent for a moment. Brent walked over. "You drop it, you buy another. That's the rule." The boy's lower lip trembled. Fiona started to reach for the scoop again. "Don't," Brent snapped. "You're not giving him another one." "It was an accident," Fiona said quietly. "I don't care." "We're not a charity." The boy's eyes watered. He didn't cry, just stood there frozen. The other kids watched, unsure. Darren stepped forward. "Give him another." Brent turned. "Excuse me?" I said, "Give him another sundae." Brent stepped closer, voice low. "You don't get to make that call." Darren met his eyes. "I do." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and placed a black Amex card on the counter. Brent stared at it, then back at Darren. "You're not just some trainee, are you?" Darren pulled off his cap. "No, I'm Darren Mitchell. My name's on the building, and I've seen enough." Brent didn't say anything at first. His eyes flicked from the card on the counter to Darren's face, the edges of his jaw tightening. The shop was quiet except for the lingering chatter of kids finishing their cones. Fiona stood behind the counter, scooper in hand, frozen mid-motion. The boy who had dropped his sundae was still staring at the puddle of chocolate on the floor, unsure what to do. Darren leaned forward just enough to lower his voice, but not enough to back down. "You're going to make another sundae, and you're going to hand it to him and apologize." Brent's mouth opened slightly, like he was going to push back, but nothing came out. Instead, he grabbed a fresh cup, scooped the ice cream without finesse, added syrup, and walked it over. He didn't make eye contact with the boy, just held the sundae out with stiff hands. The kid took it, glanced at Fiona, then walked back toward the group of children by the front table. Darren turned to Fiona. "Can you take over the register for a few minutes?" she nodded. Still watching Brent cautiously, Darren stepped into the back hallway, gesturing for Brent to follow. The moment they were out of earshot, behind the prep wall, he folded his arms. "I want to know exactly how long this has been going on," he said. Brent didn't try to look confused or deny anything. Instead, he leaned his shoulder against the wall, arms crossed. "Since before you took over, your dad didn't micromanage, he cared about margins. I kept them up." "There's a difference between managing and burying people," Darren said. "You've been overworking minors, violating labor policy, and cutting safety corners. We've had kids in here without breaks, faulty equipment, and a freezer that doesn't even seal." Brent shrugged. "That location's always been tight. You want high performance, you push hard. These kids, they don't know what hard work is. You give them too much slack and the place falls apart." Darren stepped closer. "You think yelling at teenagers and running off new hires is leadership?" Brent's tone sharpened. "I think keeping a store operating with half the staff and double the volume is what you asked us to do. I sent Cole plenty of emails about this location. Never got a response." "I read your messages. You said it was a seasonal dip and inconsistent labor pool. You never once mentioned unsafe hours or that you were ignoring policy." Brent's shoulders stiffened. "Because that's just how this store works. It's not Midtown, it's not the flagship. We don't get the same perks, but we hit our numbers." Darren stared at him. "You didn't hit your numbers, you hid behind them." Brent's voice dipped low. "You came in here with a hoodie and a fake name. You think a few shifts behind the counter make you an expert. I've been in retail for over a decade. You don't know what it's like when corporate forgets a store exists. You don't get attention unless you break something or break someone." Darren's jaw tightened. "Is that what this is to you? A forgotten store, disposable kids?" Brent didn't answer. Darren took a slow breath, then straightened. "You're done here, effective immediately." Brent pushed off the wall. "You think firing me fixes this? You'll have no one to run the place, nobody trained, no one ready. You want to stay here another week mopping floors?" "If that's what it takes," Darren said. Brent scoffed and walked to the back room, slamming the office door behind him. Darren stayed by the prep sink, listening to the distant hum of the soft-serve machine and the quiet murmur of Fiona taking orders at the front. He waited until Brent returned with his backpack slung over one shoulder, keys in one hand. He dropped them on the counter. "I'll contact HR myself," Brent said. "Don't bother pretending this wasn't personal." "It is personal," Darren said. "They're my employees, and this is my responsibility." Brent didn't respond. He pushed through the back exit and disappeared into the alley behind the store. The rest of the day was chaos. Without Brent, shifts had to be adjusted. Darren stayed through close, teaching Fiona how to override the register system when it glitched mid-transaction. Lewis came in at 4 and didn't even ask what happened when he noticed Brent's absence. He just nodded once and grabbed an apron. At closing, Darren gathered them near the prep counter. Fiona leaned against the freezer, arms crossed, while Lewis sat on an empty syrup crate, elbows on his knees. "I'm not just visiting," Darren said. "I've been working undercover because I wanted to see what was really happening here, and I've seen enough to know things need to change starting now." Fiona looked at him, eyes cautious but curious. "Does that mean you're staying for a while?" Darren said. "We're short-staffed, and you both know this place better than anyone. I'll be here until we get it fixed." Lewis gave a tired chuckle. "You're really gonna scoop cones with us every day, if that's what the store needs." Fiona's voice was quiet. "What about Brent? He's gone." "And he's not coming back." No one celebrated. They were too used to things shifting without notice, but Lewis nodded slowly, and Fiona offered a faint, almost reluctant smile. That night, after the last table was wiped down and the mop bucket emptied, Darren sat alone at the corner booth with a notepad. He started drafting a list: equipment repairs, updated training guides, safety protocol refreshers. The next morning, Darren called Cole, the district manager, and told him to meet at the store. When Cole arrived, he was already defensive. "I saw your calendar. You've been working shifts. That's not really protocol." Darren gestured for him to sit in the back office. "Neither is ignoring compliance reports from a store that's been bleeding staff for months." Cole frowned. "I didn't ignore anything. Brent never flagged labor violations. You didn't follow up. You didn't visit. You didn't know Fiona was working 7 days straight. Cole shifted uncomfortably. That's not in the system, she's part-time. I pulled the clock in logs myself, you missed it, or you didn't look, Cole bristled. Look, I've got 12 stores, that's a lot of ground to cover. Then maybe you're spread too thin. There was silence. Darren let it sit. I'm reassigning this location to a new field supervisor, he said finally. You'll still oversee your other stores, but I'm bringing in someone with compliance experience for this one. I'll be here until they're up to speed. Cole nodded stiffly. Understood. Darren didn't dismiss him. He waited until Cole stood on his own and left. By midweek, a maintenance team had replaced the broken freezer seal and swapped out the dull prep knives. Fiona noticed first. Did someone actually fix something? She asked while restocking cone sleeves. That's new, Darren gave her a look. We're just getting started, she tilted her head. You're not just patching this up, are you? No, he said. Patching doesn't work, we're rebuilding. Lewis walked past with a box of waffle batter. You know we're still short 3 people, right? I've got HR pushing hiring ads this week. Until then, we balance the shifts together. You're not going to suddenly disappear and leave us hanging, he asked. I'm not going anywhere, Darren said. Lewis nodded once, then walked back to the prep station without another word. That night, Fiona lingered after close. She sat at the counter, sipping a soda while Darren went over the next week's schedule. I thought you were just another guy passing through, she said. We've had a lot of those. I used to be, he admitted. I thought running a company meant reading reports and trusting people to handle things. But it's more than that. It's showing up when it matters. She glanced at the clock. You're still going to need people you can trust, I know. That's why I'm starting here. She looked at him for a moment, then stood. I'll see you tomorrow. Open shift again. Take the afternoon instead, he said. You've earned a break. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? Positive. Lewis and I can cover it. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You're different than your dad. I have to be, Darren said. He built this. I'm trying to protect it. She nodded once, then stepped out into the night, the door clicking softly behind her. By the end of the second week, the rhythm of the shop had shifted, but not in dramatic, sweeping ways. It was slower, granular. The kind of change that starts under the surface before anyone says it out loud. Darren still worked every shift, rotating between register, scooping, and restocking. He kept the disguise off now. No hoodie, no fake name. Just a plain t-shirt, jeans, and the same apron as everyone else. He still got sore. He still went home with sticky arms and tired legs. The freezer still blasted cold air when opened too long, and the labor shortage hadn't magically resolved. They were still 2 hires short, and every shift required juggling. Fiona had agreed to step into a keyholder role temporarily, but only if it didn't mean being on call every night. Darren said yes. One morning, she sat on an overturned milk crate in the prep area, slowly peeling a banana before her shift. She watched Lewis at the sink, scrubbing the metal scoops with a toothbrush. You ever think about quitting? She asked. Lewis didn't look up. Every week. But you're still here. He rinsed off the last scoop and set it in the drying rack. Because if I leave, who's going to teach the new people how to not break the fudge pump in 5 minutes? Darren overheard from the back and stepped in quietly. We'll have someone new shadowing you tomorrow. College student. Previous barista experience. Lewis tilted his head. You screened him yourself. I did. Fiona pointed her banana at Darren. You're not going to do this forever, are you? Like you're not planning to live here? No, Darren said. But I needed to know what it felt like to work here before I changed anything. Feels like standing for 6 hours with one 15-minute break, Lewis said. Darren nodded. Exactly. Later that afternoon, a health inspector came through, routine, but it made everyone tense. Darren walked with her, clipboard in hand, answering questions. She noticed the new thermometer in the walk-in freezer and the updated cleaning logs taped above the prep sink. This store used to be borderline, she said. Not terrible, but not great either. Today it's tight. When she left, Fiona stood near the back counter, arms crossed. She didn't even check the mop sinks. She didn't have to, Darren said. She saw the logs. Fiona watched him for a second. You're documenting everything? I have to. If I want this to last after I leave, it has to be policy, not just me being here. That night, Darren stayed late with Lewis to fix the loose faucet head that had been dripping all week. They used a wrench from the emergency toolkit and a replacement valve Darren had picked up himself. "You ever do this kind of thing before?" Lewis asked as he held the flashlight steady. "No," Darren said, tightening the last bolt. "But I figured if I can sign off on six-figure equipment upgrades, I should be able to fix a faucet." Lewis handed him a towel. "You ever think about what happens when you go back to the office? Every day. What's the plan, to not forget?" The next morning, Fiona arrived 10 minutes early, not because she had to, but because she wanted to prep the dipping station herself. Darren noticed but didn't say anything. At the same time, the new hire, a lanky kid named Marcus, arrived on time, hair still damp from a rushed shower. He looked around the store like he didn't know where to stand. Lewis handed him a towel and nodded toward the counter. "You'll figure it out." Marcus looked confused. "Just like that. There's a checklist taped to the fridge. Start there. Ask if you're not sure." Darren watched it all quietly. He'd been warned the store would fall apart without a manager, but it hadn't. It had stabilized around the people who had been holding it up all along. At noon, a woman came in with 2 toddlers in tow. One of the kids was crying loud, frustrated sobs. Fiona stepped out from behind the counter, crouched down, and offered him a tiny spoon with a dot of strawberry ice cream. He stopped crying immediately. Darren didn't say a word. He just kept wiping the prep table. The woman looked up. "I don't know how you do this with a straight face," Fiona smiled. "You get used to it." After the woman left, Marcus whispered to her, "You do that a lot." "Only when it works," Fiona said. By the following week, Darren had finished rewriting the store's opening and closing procedures. He included buffer time for prep work, mandatory break enforcement, and a flexible coverage policy for last-minute emergencies. He had HR update all scheduling software to flag any employee who worked more than 6 consecutive days. Fiona's name hadn't appeared on that list again. One evening, he called a short meeting after close. Just Fiona, Lewis, and Marcus sitting at the window booth with half-melted sundaes and plastic spoons. "I'm stepping back next week," Darren said. "I'll still be around, but not on the floor. We've got a new store lead starting Monday. Her name's Marlene, comes from another location." High scores on both employee retention and customer feedback. Fiona looked up. "Will she actually listen to us?" "She'll be expected to. And if she doesn't, you call me directly." Lewis tapped his spoon against the side of his cup. "You sure you're ready to leave?" "No," Darren said. "But I'm not supposed to be the one fixing scoops and stocking cones every night. That's not sustainable. What is sustainable is making sure you're trained, respected, and not burned out." Fiona leaned back in her seat. "So what happens to Brent?" "He's in a review process with HR. Not just for this store, for his entire management record. Whatever happens, it won't be here." Lewis looked out the window. The streetlights flickered across the sidewalk. "You could have walked away," he said. "Just blamed it on bad hires. No one would have known." "I would have," Darren said. The next day, Marlene arrived exactly 5 minutes early, clipboard in hand, sleeves rolled up. She spent her first shift shadowing Fiona, asking questions, watching everything without interrupting. She didn't raise her voice once. Darren stayed in the back, just observing. At closing, Fiona approached him by the back door. "She's good," she said. "Thorough, doesn't hover, you think she'll last." "It's not about her lasting," Fiona said. "It's about whether you leave her the right tools." Darren nodded. "That's the plan." On his last day working the floor, Darren opened the store with Lewis. No customers yet, just the quiet buzz of the fridge and the faint tapping of syrup bottles being arranged. Lewis looked over. "You're gonna miss it, huh?" "Parts of it." Lewis nodded. "You ever come back, make sure it's for the right reason, not just because something's broken." Darren smiled. "I'll remember that." As Fiona arrived for the midday shift, she dropped her backpack in the corner and tied her apron without a word. Then she paused. "You should come by sometime," she said. "As a customer, I mean. I will." She turned back to the counter, grabbed the scooper, and got to work. Darren stepped outside, the door closing behind him with a soft click. The sun caught the edge of the pastel-colored sign above the shop. It looked the same as it always had. But now he knew what it felt like to earn the name written on it.